Hi, I'm Stuart from the Norfolk Honey Company and welcome to another Microscopy for Beekeepers session. These sessions are being sponsored by Brunel Microscopes and I'm very grateful to them for their support in producing these videos. Today's the 31st of January and I was in one of my apiaries this morning just having a look round and not really surprised to see that a lot of the hazel is now in flower. We have one or two apiaries where we've got lots of hazel around the apiary, and over the last few weeks they've all started to flower and the bees are starting to come out of the hives on warmer days around lunchtime when the sun's been shining, and we've seen them on the hazel. So I thought I'd bring a few of the catkins home and make up a pollen slide and show you what hazel looks like. So let's take a look at what the hazel catkins look like, and then I'll make up a pollen slide and we'll take a look at the structure of the pollen under the Brunel Microscopes SP50 microscope. Okay, so here are the catkins. You can see that some of them have gone a brown colour, and that means that they've actually released all of their pollen. But these pale green catkins, these long parts that are now hanging down, are still loaded with lots of pollen. So what we're going to do is to take a sample from these and pop it under the microscope. So we're using the glycerine jelly with the stain already in it again because that was so successful the last time. You can get that from Brunel Microscopes if you pop to their website, and we've got it on their little heated tray. And the trick with the glycerine jelly is if you pop it in the microwave and just warm it for 5 or 10 seconds, that will liquefy it, and then you can pop it onto the heated tray and that will keep it in its liquid state. If you just pop it onto the tray while it's cold, it will take an age to warm all the way through. So this just makes the whole process a lot easier. So the reason we're taking a sample from the catkins is because we know the source of the pollen. So in taking it from the catkin, we can make up a slide where we know that the pollen is definitely hazel. And the easiest way to remove pollen from the catkins is to take the sample and bring it into a warm room, and you'll find that the catkins will open up and release their pollen. And it's simply a case of taking a watch glass to the bottom of the catkin and just moving it gently up and down, and you'll find that that will release millions and millions of grains of pollen. And I can show you that on this watch glass that I've just used. And here you can see what appears to be dust, yellow dust on the watch glass. That is actually all of the grains of pollen. So the next step is to get that onto a slide. Okay, so we've got the pollen on the watch glass, and simply by tapping the side of the watch glass we'll gather the pollen down into the centre of the watch glass, and we'll gather it all together so that it's in a concentrated group so that you can take a sample from it. So there we are, a little shake, and we've got probably millions of pollen grains there. So the next job is to add the glycerine jelly with the stain and mix it up, and then we can pop it onto the centre of a washed microscope slide. Now that this is all mixed together, we'll pop this onto the little heated tray to make sure that the glycerine jelly doesn't solidify. So here's one of our little card guides, and I've drawn a cross into the centre of it, and then we just pop the microscope slide down on top of the guide. So now we know the centre, and then we're going to take a small drop of the glycerine jelly and place it in the dead centre of the microscope slide. The next task is to place this back onto the heated tray to liquefy the glycerine jelly again. So here we've got the small tray. This is connected to a USB power adapter, so we're powering this from the computer, and I'm just going to pop the slide on top of the tray like this, and that will now liquefy the glycerin jelly again in preparation for placing the cover slip onto it. As you can see, the light is on and that indicates that the heater is working. So I'm just going to add a small amount of glycerin jelly, additional glycerin jelly, just to ensure that we can get full coverage beneath the cover glass. And we'll just leave that for a couple of seconds just to allow the glycerin jelly to liquefy. So this first one, I'm just going to use a standard square cover slip, and then the second one that we make, I'll use a circular cover slip, and we'll use that to have as our sample. And we'll also, once the slide has been completed, we'll use the ringing table to paint a seal around the edge of the cover glass. So here's the cover slip. I'm using the forceps and just a small seeker to hold it steady, and then we just lower it down and square it off. And that will now spread as the pressure of the cover glass sits onto the glycerin jelly. It will spread across and create a thin layer of glycerin jelly with the pollen samples embedded in it. So you can see that a small amount of downward pressure on the cover slip helps to spread the glycerin jelly. This isn't going to spread completely across the entire cover slip, but this is just my quick sample to take a look at. When we use the circular cover slip for our sample that we're going to keep, then we'll take a little bit more care and leave it for a little bit longer. But this is now ready to come off the heated tray and go under the microscope. Okay, so we've got the slide on the Brunel SP50 microscope, and I'm just going to focus it in. We're currently at 40 times magnification, and you can see all of the individual pollen grains here, and that looks really good. Lots of stain taken up into the pollen, so we can see them quite well. So I'm really impressed with the glycerin jelly that has the stain already in it. It's super quick and really does make it easy to make a pollen slide. So let's flip up to the next magnification. And so this is 100 times magnification, and we can start to see the actual shape of the individual pollen grains there. And so these are not what I would call typically common hazel, so I would imagine that we've got some subspecies of hazel, and if we zoom in one more time, that will take us up to the 400 times magnification. So here we are at 400 times magnification, and that really helps with the structure of the grains of pollen. We can see quite clearly the different forms and the different shapes within each of the pollen grains. So in order to identify exactly what pollen we're looking at, I use a identification book by Rex Sawyer called Pollen Identification for Beekeepers, and I'll pop some links down in the description below so that you can see the books. And I'm just going to check in here for hazel, and it could also be maybe hornbeam as well, so that's another possibility, or even I think there's a hazel hornbeam cross, so it could be that as well. Okay, so using the 400 times objective, and remembering back to one of the previous videos, I've actually calibrated the eyepiece graticule, and so I can confirm that the largest pollen grain in the centre of the image is actually around 45 microns across. So that gives us an idea as to the size, the exact size of what we're looking at. The common hazel would be a slightly more triangular shape to it. Although we have the 3 points in the pollen grain structure itself, which is exactly as a common hazel would be, the size of the pollen grains is considerably larger than that of the common hazel, which is around 25 microns. I'm quite happy to confirm that it is a member of the Corylus family, which is the Latin name for the hazel. But the common hazel, which is Corylus avellana, is not this particular hazel because the pollen grain structure is different. So we have a hazel, but it's not the common hazel. So it'll take some more investigating to try and identify it. But as you can see from the quality of the image there, it looks really good. It's got a great structure to it. And next week what I'll do is we'll pull up this slide and we'll actually look at the structure of the pollen grains, and we'll talk through exactly what the structures are called and their position, and we'll look at the function of the structure within the pollen grain. So that was a bit of a surprise. I thought that we'd got the common hazel at our apiary, but it's obviously a different hazel. But I am happy that it is a member of the hazel family. So it just shows that if you use a microscope and gather some of the pollens, you can actually identify or not identify exactly what you've got in your apiary. So I'm pleased with that, and I'm going to continue now and make up the other slide with the circular cover slip, and I'll prepare that and have that ready for next week so that I can show you how I seal the edge using the ringing table. And as I said earlier, we'll take a look at the pollen structure next week, and I'll produce some images so that we've got some labels on it to show you exactly what we're looking at. I'm really pleased with the glycerin jelly with the stain in it. That works really well. So if you're interested in getting some of that to try yourself, please do pop over to the Brunel Microscopes website. Again, my thanks to Brunel Microscopes for their support with these videos, and if you haven't already subscribed, please do subscribe and give us a thumbs up, and we'll catch up next week. Thanks for watching.